Hi guys, welcome back to AFTV, welcome back to the Tactical Insight Show. A weird one today because we nicked a point we perhaps didn't deserve. We didn't play well, a lot to go into, Graham, but how are you?
I'm very well, mate. Still recovering from that breathtaking game of football I watched yesterday between Liverpool and Man City. What an absolutely unbelievable game of football. A great effort for the Premier League. Already goal of the season, Mo Salah.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
And I think Bernardo Silva would have had an assist of this season if Foden had been able to put away that chance that he fashioned for him. So, and this is turning into a rivalry now. Klopp v Pep, isn't it? Almost like Wenger v Ferguson from the old era. Yeah, but a fantastic game of football yesterday. And that's really where shows us how far away we are, Arsenal as a club, from where those two teams are, doesn't it? First of all, we start today. Many congratulations on a year at AFTV.
Oh, thank you. Listen, Graham, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed doing this with you. It's a shame we've not been doing this the whole year.
Yeah.
But I have been really enjoying it.
I watched the show last week where Laurie paid you the compliment, and he likened you and Cecil to the Smith Rowe and Saka of AFTV. Which was a really nice compliment.
He does talk some rubbish, Laurie, doesn't he?
I do think you are you both are a breath of fresh air for the channel, I have to say. And you know, it got me thinking over the weekend where I sit in the grand scheme of things, being the old man of the channel.
Don't say
But I was trying to think of if you are the Smith Rowe or the Saka of the channel, I must be probably the oldest Arsenal outfield player ever. So have you any idea?
All right, you told me. And when we planned these shows, we talked so much. Was it Jens Lehmann?
Jens Lehmann.
I think on his return.
Jens Lehmann is the oldest ever outfield player for Arsenal, 41 years. Sorry, goalkeeper, not outfield.
Yes.
But the oldest outfield player was Lee Dixon, so I think I'll sort of see myself as Lee Dixon.
But the thing I'd say about that is, they've retired and you're still here. So maybe we've got to look more
I'm on the brink of retirement.
Maybe we've got to look more at Aubameyang or Partey, who's in his 28s or whatever. But
that's very nice of you to say, mate.
Well, no, listen, thank you so much for joining. We've got a lot to get into. Arsenal, we were hoping they'd build on the North London derby win. They drew at Brighton. Yeah. I think a lot of fans were very torn about how to feel about it. I mean, even here in the studio, we've been discussing it with people. Let's get up the match stats, because I think before anything, we want to give some context to this, and we want to go into the match stats and just look at the raw data, the raw numbers. We've got them up here. Let's break them down, Graham. What's standing out to you?
Well, before we look at the stats, I think this showed us pretty much where we are as a team.
Yeah.
The new Arsenal. We're not as bad as we were, as those early results indicated, but we're not as good as we thought we were after the Tottenham result last week. I think what I saw on Saturday was a performance that was resilient in defence, but probably in attack we're still lacking that decision making and execution. We're inconsistent. I think you get that because we have got a very young attack behind Aubameyang. With Odegaard, Smith Rowe and Saka, a very young attack, and with young players you get that sort of inconsistency. I think going into the game, the big talking points were the missing players actually in each side's midfield. Bissouma was missing from the Brighton midfield, and Xhaka was obviously missing from the Arsenal midfield. And would he go 4-3-3? Would he go 4-2-3-1? He brought in Lokonga into the Xhaka role, and I know we're going to talk about that. I thought actually Arteta struggled tactically in this game with Graham Potter, and I think the stats reflect that. We were outshot 21-8. They had more possession, they had more touches in the box, more corners, but we're going to talk about today how they actually sort of stopped us, identified the way we play out, and how they beat us really, not beat us in the game obviously, but the way they nullified us with their high press. But I think a dominant display from Brighton. In the end, I was pleased we got out of the game with a point. Yeah,
I've got to say that's how I felt. Now, I've got here on my phone, you love to send me stats, and some of these, in terms of context, we're going to get onto the kind of worrying ones, but let's apply some context to all this first. I've got it here. So obviously going into the game, Brighton are in great form. We know that, but what do we mean by that? Well, you let me know that Brighton are joint first with Liverpool with 102 completed pressing sequences, and third for passes per defensive action with 11.3. Do you want to just break that down quickly for us? I mean,
it just shows you how, first of all, how fit the team is.
Yeah.
That they have to do a lot of running in the game. And the fact that they're very good at pressing, and I think they identified the way Arsenal play out, and they obviously watched the way we played out against Tottenham. Tottenham didn't press us at all, and they obviously, with this pressing strategy which they've been using all season in this 3-5-2 shape we're going to talk about, obviously it's just incredible. They're very well honed, drilled under Graham Potter, and I think that the way he had them playing on Saturday obviously was he identified Arsenal's strengths and immediately nullified it.
Yeah, he did. Some more stats. Arsenal fielded their youngest starting 11 in the league this season versus Brighton at 24 years old and 276 days. I mean, again, we're expecting consistency from a very young group. And then, of course, you've got the difficult conditions in the game as well.
Yeah, I think the conditions obviously played a part. I think they were the same for both teams. So I'm not going to blame the conditions, but obviously it's very difficult to play football in not only driving rain but the wind as well. But it was the same for both teams, and I just think Brighton adapted better than us.
Absolutely. Now, some worrying stats that have come out since then that you sent over to me as well. That Arsenal scored 5 league goals in 7 games, the worst at this stage since 1986 and 87 season. We're 19th for away goals in the league. Only Norwich have less. Smith Rowe didn't complete a single pass to Odegaard all game. Odegaard only received 18 passes before being subbed, and Partey, out of 12 contested duels, won 2 of them. That is really worrying.
Yeah, there's reasons for that. Obviously, I think we suffered under the intensity of their high press. I think Ramsdale talked about it at the end of the game. I think the distances between Partey and Lokonga in midfield were too wide. And I think Odegaard was always struggling to pick up. They literally stopped him getting into the pockets, and they also nullified Partey playing through the lines. I think they did that really well and I think that he struggled to win his duels because basically he had so much ground to cover, and basically they forced him into errors because I think that they always seem to have that spare man in midfield. And I think that the way Potter set them up, I think certainly tactically outdid Arteta in this game with the flat 3 midfield, playing 5 with the 2 wing backs. Always gave them an extra man in midfield, James.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned the formation because that's what we're going to have a little look at now. So obviously we went with our 4-2-3-1, the same system we used against Spurs. Lokonga came in for Xhaka, so I think Arteta was trying to just keep the machine ticking, trying to just go like for like, although we know Lokonga and Xhaka aren't like for like. And then Brighton obviously went for that back 3 with that flatter midfield 3, as you mentioned, with the wing backs. We were discussing off air, it's becoming a bit of a theme, this 3 at the back, a system Arsenal is struggling to deal with.
Yeah, we struggled against Brentford when they played a back 3, and we struggled against Chelsea when they played a back 3. Those 2 teams played more of a 3-4-1-2 though. This was a flat midfield 3. Lallana, Gross and Moda across with the wing backs, Cucurella and Veltman. So that was the 5. But this in effect was a different shape, and I think the question sometimes is, do you match up teams in a back 3 or do you play to your own strengths? I mean, I've often said in the past, sometimes when teams play back 3, you match up. I don't know what you feel about it, whether you feel as though you should match up.
Yeah, we were chatting about that. I mean, it's a difficult one for me because I want Arsenal to go into games doing their thing. Now, yeah, you always got to compromise tactically somewhat, but I want Arsenal to impose themselves on the game. And I think if you're good enough, then this system Brighton played can look a very poor system. Now, it's one that Gareth Southgate used at the World Cup in 2018, and when Croatia, a good side, came and Belgium played against it, we got completely outrun in midfield because the wing-backs were pushed so far back. In this game, Brighton were dominating, Brighton were on the press, and so you've got almost that extra man in midfield going forward. So I kind of think if we're good enough, then it doesn't really matter if they're playing 3 at the back. In fact, that's something we can exploit. But when you're not the dominant team and you're trying to counter, and then they've got 3 6-foot-plus centre-backs on the recovery and they've got a really packed midfield, it's so difficult to get out. And it proved it for Arsenal.
Yeah, I think what Potter's done really well is obviously he sold Ben White, who was his ball-playing centre-back, and he's got these 3 giant defenders at the back, all 6-foot-plus. Dunk, Duffy and Byrne, basically well over 6 foot. And what he does is, with his high intensity pressing, is he forces teams to go long, knowing he's got those 3 tall centre backs to actually mop up, right? And I think if you've got a really physical centre forward, someone like Haaland of Dortmund or even a Lukaku, I think you can have joy against that system because basically that physical presence and the hold up play will draw out one of their centre backs, and then you can create 2v2 situations. But I think that's something we need to talk about, the fact that Arsenal went with Aubameyang, who I think another key to the game actually, James, was he struggled with his hold-up play and his touch was poor. Yeah. And so we weren't long towards Aubameyang. He struggled in that system against those players. So would Lacazette have been a better option? I know we're going to talk about it later. And when he came on, he did offer a better option. I think Aubameyang only had 6 passes in that game when Lacazette had 6 as well, and he was on the pitch for 30 minutes less.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, okay. Well, listen, let's go into Brighton's press. You've broken it down fantastically here, so let's go into it, because I came away from it thinking, how are Brighton so good? Conversation with you later, and I'm starting to understand. So let's break it down. We've got the systems here.
Yeah, I think what they did really well was that they identified that Arsenal liked to play out with Ramsdale. So, and also Tierney likes to bomb on high. So Tierney will bomb on high up the left, which is what a tactic that Arteta uses quite a lot. So he will bomb up high, and Partey would drop back between the 2 centre backs. Tomiyasu becomes inverted because they all literally sort of like come across the pitch in a 3, but he can sometimes go out wide as well. But that's the 3, and Partey drops into the middle. What they were doing very cleverly was Maupay and Trossard were sort of like pushing onto the centre backs, and they were sort of like setting pressing traps. So basically, with the blanket of 5 across the middle of the pitch, on one side, Veltman and Gross were sort of positioned on one side, and Cucurella and Moda were positioned on the other. And they waited to see which side of the pitch Arsenal went out to, and if it went out to Tierney, literally those 2 players, Veltman and Gross, would literally press on to Tierney, which gave him nowhere to go. He had to go back. If they went out to Tomiyasu on the right-hand side, Cucurella and Moda would press on to him. What they were trying to do, in effect, was to stop the connection. Arsenal like to build up, as we know, through the full-backs and the wingers out wide. That is the way we build up. Some teams build through the centre of the pitch. We like to build up wide. So they obviously identified the way Arsenal like to play out and they like to build up, and literally stopped us at source from going down that route. In effect, what it was meant was we were sort of like having to play back towards Gabriel or to White or to Partey, he was sitting deep, or back to Ramsdale even. And then literally there was no outball, because they were pressing. Lallana was on Odegaard, and literally Ramsdale was going long all the time, and we're going to talk about the way his passing stats dropped in this game, or White and Gabriel were going long, because we had nobody to sort of like, no outball, that they were squeezing the space so well. Lokonga, who I thought had a difficult game, I think he had to fill in for Xhaka on that side. I think being right-footed didn't help his cause. I think the distances between him and Xhaka were too great, that meant that Partey struggled as well. And I think they very cleverly squeezed us with the extra man. They always seem to have an extra man in midfield. They blocked off those passing outlets out wide on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we lost the midfield battle quite generally, didn't we? I mean, we talk about systems and press, but just in midfield we didn't look at it. I thought Partey had a poor game. Yeah,
I think he struggled because he had more ground to cover. He lost. He only won something like 2 out of his 12 duels. He had to cover a great amount of space, and what they did was, very cleverly, Brighton, not only did they press us well with their high intensity pressing, they actually disconnected that way we do pass out if we do go century, which is Partey into Odegaard. That became disconnected. Odegaard only had 18 touches, I think, or received 18 passes in the game. Yeah. Partey was struggling to find him, so that connection we had became disconnected. They did that really well. Lallana was on Odegaard a lot in the game. And I think Lokonga really wasn't really a midfield player in this game. Because he was being asked to fill in for Xhaka, he almost was like a left back. So we didn't have the connection there either, because Xhaka and Lokonga, the double pivot, meant to be close together. Yeah. But there was big distances between them because he was out wide on the left-hand side. So I didn't think that worked either, and Arteta didn't really tweak it at all. He left it like it was. And I think Lokonga struggled in that role. It wasn't his fault, because he's been asked to play on the left. He's right-footed, and he's obviously having to sort of shift onto his right foot a lot when he received the ball. And he was being asked to perform a role which he was unaccustomed to. So I think our midfield became generally disconnected right across the pitch, and they had the extra man in midfield. That meant they were able to continually apply the pressure and push us back and keep us penned in for long periods, James.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on there. And look, the numbers prove it. So last night I was doing some number crunching. I mean, and here's what I've come up with. So I'm trying to compare what went wrong between our kind of core back 3, I include Ramsdale in that, against Brighton, that we got right against Spurs. I think you've broken it down brilliantly there. It's the Brighton press.
Yeah.
What I thought was really interesting, if you look at the numbers, when we start with, White and Gabriel's passes into midfield versus Spurs, 19, it drops by 2 against Brighton. Okay, that's not a huge drop. But look at Ramsdale's passing accuracy against Spurs at 61% versus his pass accuracy against Brighton of 30%. White's drops by 21% as well against Spurs to the Brighton game. And then Gabriel's is a slight drop, to be fair, but I did think there were some sloppy moments from Gabriel as well. The numbers show that out the back, the 3 players who are key to our distribution and breaking the lines, through their fault or not, and it's hard to say whether on the ball they were at it, maybe conditions played a part. We spoke about the Brighton Press. For whatever reason, we could not get through that initial first line of press at all.
Yeah, I think there was more to it than that, though, James. I think that when we played Spurs, they didn't really press us. So they literally
Well, of course. I think they tried at times, though. I think they tried.
It wasn't much of a press, to be fair.
No, it was a very lazy
Ali
press.
and Ndombele weren't really pressing.
Yes.
I think they did that. When I watched
the
the Tottenham-Chelsea game, Ndombele and Ali were pressing. But I didn't think they were pressing that game against us. That's why Ramsdale's numbers, passing numbers, and also White's numbers are high. And they're lower in this game because I always felt that sort of like if you're being pressed and they're having to go long all the time, it's more difficult to be accurate. And that's why their passing numbers dropped.
No, absolutely. But it tells the story. You look at those kind of numbers and you can see why we didn't see some of the football in the play. You look at that second goal against Spurs. And I know Ramsdale nearly made a bit of a meal of it and Xhaka had to help it. But you think moments like that, when you do get it right and you play through, it looks so fluid, but Brighton just weren't allowing it. So you've got to credit them there. Let's talk about Granit Xhaka, I've just mentioned. A lot of online debate. I saw a few tweets, if you don't understand how important Xhaka is, then this game should tell you. A lot of people saying, well, with or without Xhaka, this performance would have happened.
Yeah.
I think we've got to get into the crux of it, and I know that, I know I receive heat for my thoughts on Xhaka and maybe my lack of appreciation. But we're unbiased on this and we're going to be real about it. The stats suggest he's a big miss.
Yeah.
Here's what we've got. Granit Xhaka with and without.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Paul Merson made a comment last week. He says that Granit Xhaka is a better player when he's not in the Arsenal team, which is quite controversial.
I do think players' values skyrocket when they're not in the team.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I think these stats do show that we are better with Xhaka in the team. And I think he was missed on that left-hand side primarily because Lokonga couldn't play the role that he does. He's not left-footed and he can't drop into that space. But if you look at Xhaka's record there, we get more points per game with him in the side. We win more games, over 50% with him in the team as against 45 with him not in the team. We score more goals with him in the team and we concede less with him in the team. So I think those numbers show that we're better within the team. But what I will say is that he's our least press-resistant player. So would he have made a difference in that game on Saturday night against a high-intensity pressing Brighton team? I think he would have possibly helped us in build-up more than Lokonga did. But I think he would struggle with the press, their high pressing, just like every other player in that team. So we are a better team with Xhaka in the team. There's no doubt the stats prove it. But I think we've talked about this before, and I think I've also talked about this with Harry Simmer on the podcast I do. Harry is a massive Xhaka fan. Even he will admit that Xhaka is not the most press-resistant player, and if we want to press up high, he's not somebody who basically going to enable us to go to that, what we want to do. But clearly, as we said last week, Arteta does trust Xhaka.
He absolutely does.
He likes what he brings to the team, and he is a very good footballer, a good technical footballer, and he understands that role that Arteta wants him to play. And I think we did miss him in that role on Saturday, clearly.
Yeah.
Whether he would have been able to sort of play that role so well with the fact that they were pressing as highly and intensely as they were is another matter, of course.
It's really difficult. I really am trying to look at all sides of it. The first thing I'll say about these numbers is I'd love to see a slightly bigger pool of games without, because it's not overwhelmingly in favour when you're talking about 130 games extra with and without. But absolutely, they do paint a picture that, when we've not had him, it's not looked that good. I'll also mention that on that press-resistant thing, because I think you're right. In build-up, he'd have got into the spaces Lokonga got into. And I think, probably not panicked. I think for all we say about Xhaka, I think he's got quite a calm head. I know sometimes he can lose his head, but I'm not talking about the kind of.
I think he organises the team as well. That's
yes, yeah. But when I mean cool head, I mean I don't think he panics in those positions. And I also think with his left foot, the positions he picks up, he'd have naturally been better in build up there. But we've seen Xhaka also be the player that teams have targeted, and players have openly spoken out and said, target him because you know that when he's put under pressure, via a press, via, maybe a bigger man, a target, or whatever, he struggles. And I think I'm being kind. I think we missed him for sure, mainly because Lokonga maybe didn't look for that system, the right replacement. And you mentioned Maitland-Niles, who's played on the left, could have been good for that.
Well, I think if Maitland-Niles, if you're looking for somebody on that left-hand side who basically understands that role, I think he would have been perfect for playing that role. If Lokonga was going to be playing left back, which in effect he was, pretty soon he was playing on that left side, almost like a left back. If you're going to want someone in that position, Maitland-Niles would have been perfect for it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes the bigger picture here is sometimes you have to think, can we move away from this tactic that he uses of just pushing Tierney up high?
Yeah.
Because if he can get away from that, Tierney can sit back more and Lokonga can come, or whoever plays, can come more into that double pivot more centrally, and we can look to progress more centrally through the pitch. But we're just so insistent, that tactic, and I think teams have sussed it now.
Yeah.
Whatever you think, Tierney just bombs them up that left-hand side, and one of our midfielders just pulls across that left-hand side. And Xhaka does fit it in a way because he's left-footed, I get that, and he's experienced, and he understands position. And that's another thing with Lokonga on Saturday. I didn't think he understood the positioning so well. I thought he had some nice moments in the game. With his
did.
He did. I'm not totally throwing him under the bus. I thought that his performance was pretty good considering the role he had to play, but I think he can't play as well as Xhaka. But I think, bearing that in mind, should we not think, if Xhaka's not playing that role, should we not think then let's not play that today, maybe not push Tierney up high and maybe change the tactics a bit more because of the personnel we got in the team?
Graham, that would absolutely be my answer, because I had a quick look at the stats for Arsenal in the Premier League, and Lokonga's right up there for tackles and interceptions.
Yeah.
So people, and I saw some, maybe I'm missing something. I'm more than happy to hold my hands up and say maybe I've not seen something others have. But I've been hearing that he's defensively lacking a bit of discipline. He doesn't cover. The numbers are telling me that he's up there for tackles and interceptions, and my eyes are telling me that he gets stuck in and he's no mug, when it comes to his defensive duties. Maybe Lokonga's just trying to adapt to what Arteta's asking him to do, and therefore he looks a little bit awkward. But I've seen more than enough that defensively he can do a job. So Arteta's got to find a way to complement the midfielders we've got, and not just say, here you go, come in and do what Xhaka did, because we don't have many like-for-likes in the team. If Odegaard gets injured, for example, and Smith Rowe becomes a number 10, you're getting a different number 10 to what you had in Martin Odegaard. So I think Arteta needs to find more ways of adapting to what he's got, and I think that was a little bit of a problem in this Brighton game.
Yeah, and I think that with Xhaka out really for the end of the year, this is something he's going to have to really seriously look at, isn't it?
Yeah.
And whether he persists with Lokonga in that position, or whether he could, of course, revert to the 4-3-3, or the 4-1-4-1.
Yeah.
That's one way.
And Odegaard being left-footed naturally comes into that space.
And maybe Maitland-Niles comes into the picture. So there's other avenues for him, but if he's going to continue with Tierney bombing up high, someone's going to have to drop over on that left-hand side, and no one does it better than Granit Xhaka.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I took out of that game on Saturday is I think, Brighton was so well drilled under Potter. We have to remember that this is a Brighton team that when we went into that game, James, that are literally above us in the table.
Yeah.
That they're sort of like 4 points, 5 places higher up than us. So, we were playing a team in a good moment. So that's why I think it was also always going to be a difficult, tricky fixture.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's round off on some other stuff. Got some questions, but let's round off on one positive as well. Arsenal's defending, because I think we've done a lot of breaking down what Brighton did great, where we didn't turn up, what we didn't do right. But there was a lot I really enjoyed about Arsenal's defending. Great quote from Tomiyasu, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here. He basically said he's disappointed because they didn't win their duels across the pitch. He said, but they did win them in the box. Obviously not all of them, but I get his point. He said that generally they actually dealt with and dominated most things Brighton threw at them aerially within our box. It was another solid display from the back four. I thought Partey, Lokonga as well in front, worked hard, and Ramsdale with a really big moment again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Tomiyasu was very honest. I think he had a very difficult game, probably his hardest game so far.
Yeah, he really struggled.
And I think he struggled against Cucurella on their left-hand side, who kept pulling him out wide. He likes to be inverted. When we push Tierney up, him, White and Gabriel sort of like drift across the pitch, don't they, in that three. He likes to be inverted as well. But he kept getting dragged out wide, so he had difficulty dealing with Cucurella, who I thought was excellent actually for them, a really good player. God knows why Barcelona released him, I have to say that. But generally our defending, really, our two centre-halves was outstanding. I mean, Gabriel, since he's been in the team, his stats are unbelievable.
Yeah, last nine with Gabriel. You got it?
Yeah,
eight wins, 1 draw, 6 clean sheets.
Yeah, 9 games, 8 wins, one draw, 6 clean sheets. That just shows you what he's brought to the team. And Ben White, although his distribution was poor in this game, he led the team in clearances. I think 7th clear, 6 in the first half alone, 7 overall. And also in recoveries, I think he had more recoveries than any player on the pitch.
Yeah, that's right. 4.
So his actual defending in the game was top notch. And him and White, him and Gabriel are forming a really good partnership now. Gabriel with his physicality and White with his, didn't see it so much in this game, but his ball playing. But even he in his defending was better. Difficult game for Tomiyasu, but once again Ramsdale wasn't flustered, and I think this is two things I took from the Ramsdale performance. Leno, when he was in goal for Arsenal, when we were conceding loads of shots under Emery, was making lots of saves, right? But I think the test of a good goalkeeper sometimes is when you're not in the game. And Leno, more prone to mistakes as Arteta changed the way we defended better and we didn't concede so many shots. And he had less shots to make. And I think last season he made a few more errors as a result of having less shots to save. But Ramsdale wasn't flustered by an early error. Questionable whether he was fouled, but he dropped the ball in the box. They didn't take advantage of it. But he made one excellent save down to his left and literally saved us in the last few minutes when they did. Because I felt as though they had 21 shots. A lot of their shots were low XG. They were going wide, or I didn't feel troubled, but right at the end they did push and they did sort of like play with 1 or 2 nice little 1-2 around our box. So I think second half we sat deep, we stopped pressing them. I don't think our press was great in the game anyway, because normally we press in a 4-4-2 with Odegaard and Aubameyang up top, but this game was different. Odegaard was not pressing up high, he was sitting more or less where Lallana was, and it was Saka, Smith Rowe and Aubameyang doing the pressing. But they stopped pressing second half, we sat deep looking to counter. But just coming back to Ramsdale, when he's called upon, he makes the big saves, and I think that he's got a lot of character as well. I saw it in that game, and I think that once again he had a pretty good game. He made a mistake area, but he didn't let it affect him. And he very honest interview from him after the game. He admitted he should be doing better, and I like to see that. Yeah,
absolutely. I really enjoyed his post-match. Now I've got some 3 quick-fire questions. Let us know in the comments as well your answers to these. Quick one. Aubameyang and Lacazette, do we need to alternate depending on the game and the opposition?
Yes. Just quickly, it was a game for Laka on Saturday, hold-up play, and we saw it in the one real chance we fashioned that we're going to talk about later on when he came on. Drew Dunk out of the middle, held it up, played it to Partey, and he played Smith Rowe through. So yes, I think it was more, sometimes it's a different game, different player. Maybe, I know it's a hindsight answer, but he could have taken Aubameyang off at half-time and played Lacazette right at the start of the second half. I think that would have improved things. And I think possibly Martinelli on the left-hand side coming on would have given us something else. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, completely agree. Should Smith Rowe have squared it? I saw a lot of debate online. I'm going to say it myself. No, I mean, let's just give Smith Rowe a bit of, a bit of
cut him some slack.
Cut him some slack. The ball's played through to you, and I think the only way is if he almost played it first time.
Yes.
But it's the first time in the game you've got behind them. You look up at all this space, you're looking up at your options, you're looking at goal, you're looking at the defender. It's a lot to process in, a split second? And he took it forward, and then I thought Duffy did really well. What's your thought?
My view is exactly the same as yours. I thought it was just excellent defending. I think he just showed him wide and kept pace with him. He tried to put a spurt on to get away from him, but the defender pushed him wide, so I don't think the pass was ever really on. It looks so easy when you freeze frame a a shot where you say you can just knock it across there. I don't think you saw he was running at pace, being forced out wide. I don't think the pass was on. He did the best to create an angle to get a shot away. I think it was a typical Arsenal, the way we're playing second half, sitting deep, looking to hit him, and Lacazette suits that style perfectly because he can come short, he's a focal point to hold the ball up, bring other players into play, and that's the one moment where Partey was able to play a ball through the lines to release him, and then immediately, once we've pulled one of their three centre-backs out of shape, you've got a 2v2 situation there, but it's still a lot to be done, and I think he did the best he could have done.
Absolutely. Guys, please don't judge football off screenshots. I mean, don't judge certain moments off screenshots. Yes, I think I watched it live and I thought it never felt on to me. But listen, others disagree. And then very lastly, to round it all off, has it been a good 4 weeks? Obviously, since the last international break, we go into another.
If you'd said, coming back from the international break, would you take 10 points out of 12? I would have bit your hand off for that. We beat Tottenham and we got a good point at a team in the top 6, and we beat Burnley and Norwich, which I expected, so 10 out of 12 is a good return. And importantly also is that we get 3 clean sheets in those games. So I would say 10 out of 12 was a really good return. Disappointing
not to win at Brighton, but when you look at the fact that we've made up however many points, I think 7 points on Spurs, we've made up, I mean, who's top? I think their top was 16, Chelsea. So
17.
So we've made, is it 17? Oh, right. So, but we've made up points on everyone actually from the start. So I think we can be happy. I understand people just being disappointed with Brighton, but I think we could be happy, especially with the clean sheets and the new side and some of the things we're seeing.
I think the thing people have to also recognise, this is still a very young team.
Yeah.
This is where we're going now. I think so. You're going to get inconsistent performances from some of those younger players, but I think key now the next 2 games. Aston Villa and Crystal Palace, next 2 home games. If we can get 2 wins there, I think that sets it up very nicely for the more difficult set of fixtures. But I would have said, going into the international break, coming up from the last one, we were bottom of the table with 0 points, to have taken 10 points out of 12 is probably a really good return.
Yeah. Listen, of course, there are still worries, guys. We should have lost really at Brighton when you look at the balance of play. The only 5 goals in 7 leagues. Yeah, that's all worrying for sure. But let's not go overboard either. I think we've still got a lot to learn about this team. So, Graham, thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure.
Who knew we'd have so much to talk about in a 0-0?
I was dreading it, to be honest.
Yeah, but hey, we did it. I think that was a Sunday well spent. I was on the recovery. Obviously, I was away, couldn't get to the game. But I'm on the mend, which is good.
Just one question. How did you get in the ground at Brighton?
I didn't go.
No, not in the game, the previous show. The warm-up.
Oh, Cecil made that happen.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
He's a good lad, isn't he?
Cecil knows people. Yeah, but good stuff. Guys, thank you so much for joining. As always, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time after the international break, obviously, No, we won't. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time and 1 day. Yeah. Because Arsenal play on the Monday night against
football.
Crystal Palace.
They got 2 games in 4 days, on the Monday night and the Friday night.
So we'll be back on the Tuesday and then obviously the Monday after that. Don't forget to watch the Buyers Premier League show coming out a little bit later today with Robbie and White Yard and all the other content, news daily and everything throughout the week. And plenty of new shows as well come this week to fill that international break as well. Thanks as always. Like and subscribe and we will see you next time. Thanks again.